Hello, my name is Hannah,
And my name is Miao.
and today we are going to discuss how basic assumptions about employees differ in Eastern and Western cultures.
The goal of today's informational training video is to have you work more efficiently with coworkers from different cultures.
Let's begin! Cultures differ in various ways. If you oversimplify cultures, you end up making generalized assumptions without taking individual differences into consideration. However, if you consider hundreds of factors, you spend more time figuring out how each person differs. Therefore, today we will discuss Erin Meyer's culture map.
The culture map has 8 different skills. This was chosen because it is not too long or too short. The 8 skills are: first, communicating; second, evaluating; third, persuading; fourth, leading; fifth, deciding; sixth, trusting; seventh, disagreeing; and the last one, scheduling.
We will go through each of the scales and discuss how Eastern and Western cultures differ. The first scale is communicating. This scale was developed by American anthropologist Edward Hall and refers to different communication styles and cultures. Specifically, there is high and low communicating style. Western cultures tend to have low context, explicit communication. This means that their communication style is precise, simple, explicit, and clear. Messages are understood at face value. Eastern cultures, on the other hand, have high context, implicit communication styles. This means that communication is often sophisticated and nuanced. Messages are implied but not plainly stated. For example, imagine a worker has been assigned a lot of work and won't finish by the end of the shift. In a Western culture, they may say something such as, "You have given me too much work, there's no way I can finish by the end of the day." However, in an Eastern culture, they would say, "Maybe I can work overtime to get things done." What they're really saying, though, is that they are unsatisfied about the amount of work they have and are complaining.
The second skill is evaluating. This skill refers to how cultures prefer receiving negative feedback. This can be split into frank and diplomatic feedback. Western cultures prefer receiving frank, open, and direct feedback, whereas in Eastern cultures, they prefer diplomatic feedback to ensure harmony and safe face in the workplace. Understanding where a worker falls on the evaluating scale will give you an important idea about how to handle many things in workplace. For example, performance appraisal and how negative feedback will be understood by your colleagues.
The third scale is persuading. This scale refers to the thought patterns that will be most effective at persuading others. It can be split into holistic versus specific thought patterns. Typically, Western cultures will break down an argument into a sequence of distinct components, otherwise known as specific thinking. Eastern managers think more holistically and focus on how various components all fit together. For example, let's say you're a manager in an organization. Your company is losing money fast and you need to downsize. How would you persuade HR which people to lay off? That's a great example. Here's another way of how Western and Eastern managers would differ in their responses. A Western manager may make the argument that workers that are inadequate should be fired. The manager would go on to say that inadequate workers are the ones that don't produce as much or bring a huge profit to the organization. An Eastern manager, on the other hand, considers inadequacy of workers, but they will also look at other factors as well. For example, they would persuade HR to consider contextual issues. Most likely, they would tell HR to consider laying off people that are not relatives or close friends of those higher up in the organization.
The fourth scale is leading. Leading refers to the degree of respect and deference shown to authority figures. This skill was influenced by Dutch social psychologist Geert Hofstede. The skill can be split into egalitarian versus hierarchical leading. Western cultures are more egalitarian. It is common to treat everyone equally, regardless of their role.
For example, in meetings, everyone is encouraged to participate and contribute. On the other hand, in Eastern cultures, hierarchical leading is more common. Great deference is shown to the leaders. Even if a leader is wrong, subordinates are unwilling to point it out, and would be considered extremely rude if they do so. It is inappropriate for subordinates to disagree with their supervisors and their supervisors' decisions in public.
The next scale is deciding. Deciding refers to the degree to which a culture is consensus-minded. Western cultures tend to be more democratic, while Eastern cultures typically allow the boss to make unilateral decisions. For example, in a Western culture, everyone is expected to contribute to a decision during a meeting. However, in Eastern cultures, only the leader is expected to make a decision. His or her subordinates are expected to follow through and openly support that decision.
The sixth skill is trusting. Trusting refers to cognitive trust and affective trust. Western cultures tend to build trust cognitively through work. They believe that if co-workers collaborate well, respect one another's contributions, and prove themselves reliable, there must be mutual trust. On the other hand, Eastern cultures build trust as a result of strong connections. If time is spent together, laughing, relaxing, and getting to know one another, there must be a mutual liking, thus establishing trust.
Trust is also built in different ways in different cultures. For example, in Western cultures, when meeting with a business client, workers will be seen as more trustworthy if they can show their contributions and prove themselves reliable. However, in an Eastern culture, when meeting with a business client, besides showing your professional ability and reliability, there is more focus on building a close relationship with the client. For example, the client will most likely be taken out to eat, drink, and learn more about one another outside of the work.
The next scale is disagreeing. Different cultures vary in the amount of tolerance they have for open disagreement, and it is either seen as helpful or harmful to relationships depending on the culture. In Western cultures, while open disagreement is not preferred, it is typically okay. For example, it's okay to openly disagree with a coworker on a project you are working on together. However, for Eastern cultures, open disagreement is seen as harmful, inappropriate, and disrespectful to the relationship. Eastern cultures focus on saving face and promoting harmony, and open disagreements are seen as a huge slight.
The last skill is scheduling. In some cultures, people strictly adhere to schedule, whereas in others, they treat it as a suggestion. In Western business, time is not held to the same standard as those in Eastern cultures. For example, in Argentina, it is considered normal to arrive 20 to 40 minutes late after the official start time of an event. In Brazil, if a worker will be 10 minutes late for a meeting, he or she does not even need to bother to let co-workers know, because it is expected for everyone to show up late than the time expected. However, Eastern cultures tend to be more punctual. For instance, in Japan, if a bullet train is even a minute late, everyone is given an excuse leave to take to the work to explain why they are late. In addition, in Western cultures, schedules are flexible, and workers can negotiate their start date and end date of the work, as long as 40 hours are being completed per week. For instance, if a worker comes in at 7 a.m. in the morning, they are able to leave earlier at night as well. However, in Eastern cultures, schedules are fixed and there is no room for negotiation. And that concludes the 8 skills. What we have discussed here today are general assumptions about Western and Eastern cultures. However, there are differences in every culture. Completely relying on the 8 skill of the culture map may have adverse effects. Even Germany and America don't align completely on the 8 skills, and they would both be considered Western cultures.
In addition, if you're leading a global team with, say, Brazilian, Korean, and Indian members, it isn't enough to recognize how your culture perceives each of the others. You need to understand how the Koreans perceive the Indians, how the Indians perceive the Brazilians, and so on, and manage across the map. As you learn to look through multiple lenses, you may see that on some scales, the Brazilians, for example, view the Indians in a very different way than the Koreans do. Therefore, we encourage you to utilize these 8 scales as a map when interacting with diverse coworkers, but know that everyone is different. We thank you for joining us today. Please head on over to the case studies section to test your knowledge with this informational training program.